Hello and welcome to all who are joining us tonight on episode 3 titled The Neophyte Ceremony, which we're going to be going into more on the symbolism behind the veil of what people may be thinking. But first, I'd like to introduce myself and my co-host. I am Frater S.
I'm Frater O.
I am Sorvy.
And I am Frater D.
Alrighty, we still got to make that somehow more exciting. Maybe we need to play a tune in the background or something. Because when we go to do that, it's like series arguing. And as proper tradition of what we are doing upon tonight, you're going to join us on a journey into iHeart Golden Dawn Radio.
The light of the cross.
I think that was the best one.
Okay. Yeah. So jumping right in, it is, what's today, guys? Is it Thursday?
It is Thursday.
It is Thursday. Episode 3, I believe. We were thinking about it before the call, and we're going to be covering the Neophyte Ceremony. Now, for those that are going to be listening, and you're interested in the Golden Dawn, and you're like, how does someone go through this? Well, you can listen to us talk about it on this episode, which we're going to go into it in further detail. I myself, I have practiced this with a couple friends of mine, and with that, it allows us to be able to talk about it in further detail. Yeah, and today, so I'd like to ask everybody, has anybody actually practiced or thoroughly read through the Neophyte Ceremony? Have you practiced it with your friends? Did you role play? How did you study or come to the awareness of the Neophyte Ceremony?
I discovered it in the brick. I just thought that it was a really amazing introduction into the teachings of the Golden Dawn.
Yeah, same here, actually. Israel Regardi's The Golden Dawn, or as I've heard it called, like Sorvy said, the brick, has a breakdown of the Neophyte Ceremony, which is a very rich, long, and nuanced ceremony.
Yeah, a lot of poetic writing and profound symbolism, too.
Oh, yeah, we could definitely spend more than an hour talking about the Neophyte Ceremony, that's for sure.
It makes me wonder how old it really is.
Good question.
I gotta ask you guys, how do you guys feel about having a hoodwink put over your head and then being thrown in a trunk, driven to a forest, and then
wow, you guys really got down.
But seriously, how did you guys feel how do you guys feel about the hoodwink? And as far as what did it mean for you if you practiced it, if you've just read it, what did it mean for you when you're hoodwinked and you have no idea what the heck you're doing and someone's just leading you? What would that mean to you as you're walking around hoodwinked, as someone's just follow me?
It's really, there's so much blind faith involved in the first couple steps, right? You just have to have this knowing in your heart that you're going in the right direction as you're becoming aware of this darkness that you're kind of already walking through, and you become kind of lucid to that, to the situation you're in, walking through darkness, by having it, say, if somebody had that physically put on them. I thought that was just a really metaphor for that. But just a lot of faith, like hearing about how they might get like walked into certain areas, and you're really making yourself vulnerable by completely surrendering yourself and overcoming any form of, hey, I need to defend myself because this is kind of a different situation. But then there's just like your heart that's just like, no, this is okay. And that's what I think a lot of the faith is, heart-based. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It seems a lot like in true occult science fashion, a lot of this is meant to speak to your subconscious mind and kind of play out this psychodrama. Psycho is in the mind, psyche drama, I guess I should say, that would be more accurate. to symbolizes or signal this change to the subconscious mind, that there is an initiation of universal proportions taking place.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's part of the reason why they do the knocks and the bell rings, and there's so many like little triggers going on, right, to capture that subconscious, just like like kind of grounding the or like more like connecting like the higher consciousness to the, I guess you could say, lower consciousness.
Yeah, just like an alchemist would mix different tinctures and things like that in very specific portions and temperatures. So with those triggers you talked about, speak the language of the deeper minds to actually very scientifically and specifically initiate the candidate.
Yeah, Frederick, I really like the way you said that, because it's, when I used to hear these things, I'm like, oh, you're knocking 3 times to provoke this spirit to come in this one, this one. You think you're bringing all these outside forces, but really it's activating these inner forces within you. I thought that was very surprising and fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And to throw this out there, if we went back to its golden days, haha. I mean,
magical puns.
Any one golden day is all golden days, okay?
We're in the early, late 1800s, early 1900s, and you have a friend, and I would hope that they are more than an acquaintance, offers you an invitation. And I would imagine that it looks a little creepier as it would now, because today with the internet, movies, everything has pretty much been revealed to us. You go to this place, wherever the heck it's done, you're put in a robe and you're hoodwinked. Like, I would imagine the alchemical journey that you're going through just in that ceremony alone. And like sort of saying, you better hope to God that you thought that friend was a really good friend. But yeah, I thought I'd just throw that out there. I always do think about that, because we are in different times. I mean, our phones are tracking us. There are cameras that are watching you as you're driving to wherever you're going. There are ways of finding you. But back in that time, there is nothing of what we're talking about. And you're just going on this whimsical that I'm going to get initiated and everything's going to be okay.
Then everything will be completely clear. Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess just to throw something out there, officers of the Neophyte. What do we have? What's a fun topic we could go into? Hyrus.
Yeah,
throwing it out there.
It's interesting that there was so much of an infatuation with like Egypt in England in that time, when the Golden Dawn was formed. So a lot of the mystery, like you were saying, like now versus then, like now, we've had so many different movies and all sorts of different stuff related to ancient Egypt, so it doesn't have as much mystery as it did back then. But then you look at the way that the Golden Dawn approached all these different Egyptian gods, and the symbolism is just really profound. All these
no, totally.
Where are those
Horus, Osiris.
Yeah, what do we have in there? We have Horus, Osiris, Ma'at.
Ma'at, Anubis.
Of the east and the west.
Oramaut, Damashnayat.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Dais officers, too. You have Nephthys, Isis, Thoth. And then there's all the invisible stations that they talk about in the in Rigardi's book, too.
Yeah.
Small. It's interesting. I think it's a common misconception that whenever the Golden Dawn uses this symbolism and we hark to these gods, I think it seems to the uninitiated to be just a sort of simple paying homage to this ancient lore, or maybe even what's that?
Like a pagan ritual.
Like a pagan ritual where you pay homage, which is understandable. But it's much more than that. It is awakening these specific, not just the Egyptian gods, but the Egyptians just happen to have a really cohesive system of these archetypes that are within all of us. And I think that subconsciously was a lot of the reason behind England at that time discovering magic and whatnot, had that fascination and infatuation with ancient Egypt, because we were discovering their secrets. And around that time, I think his name was like Champollion or something. Some French guy was deciphering hieroglyphics, and we were actually able to read these rites and these rituals for the first time. And I really believe that, just like the Neophyte ritual, that actually began to awaken something in the European area consciousness, that mass consciousness, as they begin to read these rituals for the first time. So really, it's not just none of it is arbitrary, I guess, is my point.
Gotcha. So what I need to start doing is carving these into bathrooms, so that whenever somebody goes in there, they just boom. Start
That's
awakening.
exactly what you should do. Totally.
You need to go sneak to nightclubs.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe
Yeah.
not.
Maybe not.
Can you imagine though to go to Egypt and see the hieroglyphs though in person and actually be in those areas?
Yeah. Oh, that would be awesome. Imagine putting on a 0-0 ceremony in an Egyptian temple.
In one of the harmonically tuned temples. Come on. Oh my God.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
You get an archetypal energy that comes in. You call this paying homage?
Oh no!
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I'll stick to being hoodwinked in a forest by my buddies in the back of a van.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I gotta ask you guys: has anybody on this call found where this ceremony is yanked from or pulled from?
Oh, besides the brick.
Besides the brick, I like it. Yeah. No, it's always been a question in my mind. Where did this get pulled from?
I think it has a lot of connections to the.
It obviously works.
It has connections to like the Eleusinian mysteries, right, and the Samothracian mysteries and whatnot, like as ancient Greek. Which probably just goes to say that it came from Greece after coming from Egypt, after coming from, probably the Middle East, and probably just a tradition that's been passed along through all of those different nations.
Right. And gaining in tradition and specificity.
Exactly. Yeah. Taking little bits along the way.
It does seem so precise. It was very obviously intentionally made. How powerful it is. It reminds me of somebody kind of like charting the movements of the cosmos, and every person is kind of playing a part in that. Because I always, I couldn't help but feel that as I was reading this from the book, I, was experiencing, this event happening on a level of myself that my human self isn't completely lucid and aware of all the time. And I feel like it really strengthened my connection, with the movements that happen in the realm of, my higher self, or some people might say your cosmic self. But I just thought it reflected I don't know how. I really don't know how, and I really, this could be hearsay heresy, but I really feel like it reflects the cosmos somehow.
Absolutely, yeah. As above, so below.
You look at the stations of the different officers, right? And if you correspond them to, say the planets, right? You could definitely see that they're all the planets are represented by the officers in the ceremony. So it is like definitely happening on a higher level, so at least symbolically, you know.
Right.
Is,
Absolutely.
is the candidate that they talk about in the book, is that like an asteroid or is that a planet itself?
No, I don't think the candidate has a planet associated with it, but
Good question.
that is a good question though.
Candidate is a lump of coal.
Burn him.
It's the lead.
To throw this out there, I always thought this was the strangest thing. Even to this day, I still haven't been able to put a concrete answer. Where does the Hierophant come from when he walks through the pillars and he puts his hand in the candidate's hand? Because he comes from the exit. Where does he come from? He's the only officer to do that, to walk through the exit of the pillars. Because as we walk through the pillars to pathwork, we would be going technically and metaphorically and metaphysically speaking up, even though there's no, it's, you know what I mean? But he comes from the other end through them. Where is he coming from? Where would the Hierophant or Osiris be coming from? It's always puzzled me.
Heaven.
Heaven. That's it. That's it right there. Heaven.
You're welcome.
I knew it.
Yeah, no,
You're
I
so
Path
close.
of the path of Samek, right? Wouldn't that be, if you were looking at it like the tree of life?
But where would his abode? Where would his abode be coming from, though? Where is that archetype's abode coming from? If he's coming directly from somewhere, and if the Hall of the Neophyte isn't on the tree, how could he be coming from Samek?
Ooh.
I mean, he's a hierarchy.
Man, you've really studied this ritual, Frieder.
Hey, I'm telling you, maybe you should. I'm telling you, everybody on this call, whoever's listening, see if you can kick your mom out of her house for at least a full day. Set it up, whether you got to do it in the kitchen or basement. I don't know what people got these days. And make it happen. Get some friends over. You can make it work.
So
Stupid.
I want to hear what you think.
Yeah, I'm pretty stumped on this.
No, it's just I don't know anything. I'm just trying to see what you guys think. Because if the Hall of the Neophyte is not on the tree, and he's coming from somewhere, because you could say metaphysically and metaphorically, symbolically. Go ahead, Sora.
Can we say that the abyss isn't on the tree, right? Technically.
Well, that would be that. Well, you really have to differentiate the two, because some people always relate to the abyss as Da'at.
Right.
But remember, if Da'at technically has fallen and is no longer technically there, then to call it an abyss, that would be purely the abyss. But I'm always, and I guess I could throw this out there to you guys, nothing ever ceases to exist, especially if it was on the astral plane. Only the physical, the guff, the body that we have ceases to exist. So Da'at is still there, just not in its most complete fashion as it once was. That's just my take on it, because if it is locked in the astral, like so it says, Akashic records and so forth, I would imagine the glyph in the tree, even Da'at is still there, just not in its original state.
Right.
So are we talking about Da'at? Or are we talking about truly the abyss? Or are we?
I was referring to that, not truly the abyss, but maybe the Hierophant comes from truly the abyss.
So if that's the case, going based on that the officers are the representations of the planets, where would we now place the Hierophant or Osiris? If we're going to go with that theory.
You got us thinking.
Yeah, I think you're losing me a little.
Yeah. That's a good question. These are
Rephrase the question, Frater.
Rephrase the question. So, would you like to phone a friend? Ma! Ma!
Where's that?
So if you look at the ceremony, you see the Hyrus rotates around, and he's demonstrating to the candidate when he talks, but he never steps through. At least maybe I would imagine back then, maybe if there's an accident, sure, he stepped through. But Osiris or the Hierophant is the only officer who, as it's labeled in the brick, goes through the pillars from the exit. Where is he coming from? Especially if the Hall of the Neophyte isn't on the tree, quote unquote, using my fingers. Where did he come from?
He's got to be coming from the tree itself. Then that's my first thought.
Then can you tell? Then would you be able to now tell me how to get back to wherever the Hall of the Neophyte is? Like in a magical state, where would that be?
Well,
you're like, I'm in a never mind.
No, don't
never mind. Yeah, never mind.
Guys, I don't know. Obviously my first thought would be, Occult, but I feel like, I don't know, the Hierophant is like this reconciler, right? So I feel like he would be sort of somewhere in the middle,
Where'd you say, in the hills? What?
I said something in the middle.
Oh, I was like, right.
Yeah, go to the hill. It's over there.
He's in the hill.
Oh, there's the Hierophant in the hill. Yeah, that's my first thought. I'm still going back to the tree, man. I think that's the only place my mind can go right now.
It's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one. It's a tricky one. Because also, I don't know if I'm smoked or I read it, or unless that's another officer in the Neophyte, where the officer takes on multiple archetypes. So if that's the case, and we placed one, we'll reference it to a very solar current, which you might be able to place Osiris there. What about the other one that he swaps to? Now, where do we place that? If all of these archetypes in the ceremony are in representations of planetary currents, or at least archetypal energies, even if we don't want to per se call them strictly planetary, archetypal representations of a specific energetic current, where the heck is the Hierophant coming from? Being able to juggle between multiple archetypes mid-ceremony.
Maybe from within yourself. Is that too much?
It's not enough. It's not enough, Sor.
From my heart.
Props to you, Sor, for bringing out answers, because I'm unfamiliar with this train of thought.
My answers are completely useless, so that's okay.
Well, there's something.
No, Sor, we're actually getting somewhere. We have actually pretty much a better storyline. We might even be able to alter the brick. We've got the hills. Someone said heaven earlier. So, it's just something to throw out there that usually I've never heard it personally. I've never seen it talked about on forums or I've never personally ever heard anybody talk about that. Where the heck did he come from? But if anybody else wants to throw something else out there, we can get off of the Hierophant and where does he come from? I don't know. Ask the Pope. He knows everything.
Oh my
But yeah. How about that sword of the Hieros when he puts it as it states, and the sword of the Hieros puts it on someone's neck? Imagine that you're hoodwinked, you're on your knees, and you feel this blade get on the back of your neck.
You're gonna start regretting this.
Nope, I am with God. Oh, God.
I am with God. Yeah, seriously. How are you convincing yourself that you're still with God? Like, and you have a blade on your neck. You're like, oh, Lord.
Oh, gosh. I feel like God just wouldn't let you run at that point. Every feeling in your heart would just combat any human sensations of like, this is not normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
What was that, Sora?
I don't know. What do you guys think about like what went through your head when you were reviewing that? Like the happening with the sword being put on your neck.
Well, obviously, it's kind of like being knighted.
There you go. I
Ooh.
like
I
that.
like that. Jeez.
Wow, way better than being beheaded. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, seriously, way better than being about to be decapitated.
They're gonna have to call me Sir Fratter now.
Sir Fratter.
Sir Fratter. Sir Fratter, dude.
I could imagine just being so overwhelmed by everything else going on, you know? Like,
It's kind of like sensory overload, right?
yeah, you know. It's like, that's the last thing I'm concerned about is this cold steel on my neck.
Right.
Like,
So,
yeah, I'll be there.
and I don't know how it was back in the day. Did they really get naked underneath the ropes? Like, oh my God. Like, are
Probably.
you kidding me?
Let's go take a bath in the river real quick, and that'll be good.
In the river.
Ceremonially clean.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you have to offer. Yeah.
I mean, as long as the robes weren't made of wool back then, you know.
Oh, you never know, man. That's a good question. I wonder what they were made out of.
But they were organic, you know, local. So.
Yeah, but you know, wool, it gets really scratchy if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I bet it was cotton.
But if it was wool, the thicker material, you know, the thinner stuff that we have in today's world, I would imagine as you're walking, it can kind of get stuck. If somebody was to go through it, it might be able to get stuck in between your, your gluteus maximus.
Yeah.
Shoulder blades. Shoulder blades.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this.
Oh man.
Yeah, they did not have the luxuries we have now back then.
Seriously,
definitely makes me want to take advantage of that more and actually try it out.
Yeah, no, totally. The fact that I can do it when my mom isn't home is a blessing in and of itself. But like you're saying, imagine having to. What's so fascinating about this, the Neophyte ceremony, besides the ceremony in and of itself, I always go back to the prior process of it. So you have to know somebody for one, two, be invited, and then three, what are the odds that you would have a friend, or you better hope that they're a close enough acquaintance, you call them a friend, that does this? What are the odds of that?
Disclose this to you.
Because I think at that time period, back in the day, you weren't killed for it, but I'm pretty sure you were like verbally crucified. Like you were shunned from your town. Nobody could find out you did this. No way.
For the most part, it was high society too. It was rich people, you know.
Right.
It's a little more accepting these days, you know.
Yeah.
I think the Rigardi, you can get the Rigardi book for about what, $30, I think, on Amazon. As opposed to having to be some sort of pillar of the community.
Right.
Now we're all pillars of the community.
Yeah, everybody's got a voice.
Yeah, that's it is interesting to understand like how this knowledge was passed on in a closed order, right? How did people continue learning this?
Oh, a lot of the things goes to Israel Rigardi.
Yeah, and the founding Masons too. I wonder how much of the the 00 ceremony is connected to like the Freemasons initiation ceremony. I'm sure there's a lot of parallels.
Right. To my understanding, this Golden Dawn has some pretty deep roots in Freemasonry.
Right.
Yeah. Most things.
Mathers and Westcott, they were Masons, right?
Yeah. And as you were talking about earlier, Frater asked, wondering where the Neophyte ceremony was yanked from. Didn't that come from the cipher manuscripts?
But where did they get it from?
God.
The hills.
It's just like Bible school. All you have to say is Jesus, and there you go.
Where do you get it?
Correct answer.
Every time.
That's always technically right.
It's half right.
Participation. Now I know what to say if I ever get on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. God, every question.
God. Yeah.
Dang, this guy found the loophole.
But where did they gather that from? Because it is very interesting when you look at it. So let's say this is an Egyptian rite. The officers are representing who they represent, obviously Egyptian archetypes. You're going through it. I find it very fascinating, at least from the books that I have seen. when they're purifying and consecrating, it's in Latin and not in an Egyptian fashion.
Right.
So there's a couple things that you can see the not cross-contamination, definitely not what I mean, but the merging of formula that clearly works regardless of what ceremony it is being done in.
Right. That's a really good point.
That's what I mean by that. Where are they gathering all these different tools? Because as we talked about in our prior episodes, the Golden Dawn, all it is a toolbox. Like cut the crap, cut out all the mystical. It's a toolbox, like roughly an alchemical toolbox that fixates through the magician all these different tools that we can use, whether it's obviously doing a ceremony, ceremonial magic, initiations, et cetera. But in this specific ceremony, it's so unique because they're doing purification in Latin. It seems to be some form of baptism, maybe, if you will, because there's purification and consecration. You are bowing your head. And I say the baptism because it's interesting. Depending on which rite you would go through in the Christian tradition, when they baptize you, you might go backwards. When they go to dunk you, you may be fully submerged. And in this case, I find it very fascinating. At least that's what it says. When they go to put your head down and the hieros puts his sword against your neck, it's almost like that little initiation right there.
Right.
Very interesting. But yeah, which roots are they pulling from in the neophyte specifically? It's very unique.
My studies have been independent, so my knowledge on this would be almost exclusively from the internet.
That's fine. That's fine.
What has the internet told you?
Well, I mean, there's the whole story of like Christian Rosenkreuz, right? And his travels and where his travels took him, and I think that plays into the whole, the tabernacle to Egypt, to Greece, to Rome, is, I think if you follow that story and more of that kind of what I guess would fall into like the Rosicrucian tradition, I think that that kind of probably plays a part, I would imagine.
But where does the red lamp come from?
Ooh.
You see what I mean? Like, it's all these little things that are being pulled. Like, where does the lamp come from? And then you have the staff of the curates. It's all dipping into it seems to be Egyptian, but then we say Latin, but then there's something else, and then there's something else. It's all these different roots coming together.
I think the caduceus is definitely Greek, right? I think that comes from Hermes.
Oh yeah, Hermes, he was very prominent in Greece and Egypt, and Hermeticism. I think that's where a lot of these roots came from. So,
Hermes,
I'm going to walk through the different cultures. We just kind of have his culmination of knowledge.
Right, yeah. Yeah, Hermes Trismegistus is actually a wonderful example of that, since we have three different... Can you say that again?
No, I'm sorry. I was just saying I can't believe I don't know. I completely overlooked that.
Yeah, definitely. Since he's got three different identities in the so-called lore, he's a wonderful example of what's the word I'm looking for? Synthesizing different systems. As for where they're being pulled from, though, I don't have a good answer for that, Freder.
And you said there's three. What are the identities? There's Hermes. Who else?
Thoth and Hermes Trismegistus.
So we have two. We have the Curics, Thoth. It's interesting. I can throw this out there and totally butcher me if I'm butchering this. Old Testament, when he has the serpent on, is it brass?
Yeah.
Moses.
Moses. You're seeing it travel, and that's also something to throw out, which I don't want to call it a Gnostic thought, but I mean, it definitely is something to say when you're seeing this one tool migrate, or what the tool represents archetypally, an energetic current that manifests itself to us through this structured tool, migrating through all these different religions around the world at drastically different time periods too, not just 50 years later, major jumps in history, still manifesting itself. And this is something to say as well. the tool is not manifesting itself differently. It's roughly ballpark the same. Not like if you go to compare, for example, Horus in comparison to Mikael, they have that similar current as far as a protector. But no, this one symbol not shifting its appearance, manifesting itself in the Egyptian, in Greek now, in Christianity, or technically from a Jewish as a Jewish symbol, in their tradition. It's constantly traveling and revealing itself to man. And then even in our ceremony in, what was it, 1800s, it's manifesting itself in the Hall of the Neophytes. Something very unique.
Right. It keeps emerging from somewhere.
Exactly.
Independently.
And that's something to say.
I always thought that it was, before I got into the Western tradition, when I leaned more towards the Eastern tradition, I always equated the Nehustan, or the serpent on the brass cross. I always read that as kind of a metaphor or simile for Kundalini, which may not be completely accurate, but is also kind of an interesting consideration with this, when you consider the symbol of the snakes on the cross.
I think, yeah, like the raising of that energy to connect to that higher current.
Right. The spiraling and the dynamic interchange of polarities.
Right.
And also just the, you have a curve and a line, which seems deceptively simple, but they are some of the most important esoteric symbols out there.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
You're like, shut up with the cross.
Drifting off into deep thought, and you're like,
yeah. Well, it's kind of crazy making a comparison to science, like like a strand of DNA. You know how it has that same kind of shape as the caduceus one.
Sure. Sure.
Maybe it appears in different points of evolution.
That's what I was kind of thinking, maybe.
Right.
I could totally steal that thunder right around, so.
That's what's great about this stuff is that, the more that you look at it, you start making all these different connections to everything. You're like, it's all connected.
That's one of the most difficult parts of it for me, is a lot of the time you're like, you have the brass snake in the desert in the Bible, and then you have the Hermes, Caduceus, so on and so forth. But you're like, why is it important that these match up? And then you get into the heart of the symbology, and then you kind of realize that you are more than stretching your mind, you're stretching yourself to be able to operate and think on an entirely new level that is inherent in you, but it's completely foreign to a certain surface level of you. So imprinting these images and studying them and consistently practicing with them and living with them, making them a part of yourself, it really does build a different part of you, and it expands you to be able to think. I guess the modern way to put it would be multidimensionally.
Right.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, the information you receive, or just the time that you spend studying it, like you grow to understand it because you change as a person. I like that.
Right. And it can be frustrating sometimes for me personally, because you go into a ritualistic state of mind with all of those cues, and you have these aha moments during that time. But then when you go back into your mundane life, you really have to stretch yourself to bring that into your life and to apply it. Otherwise, you'll find yourself feeling disillusioned or frustrated, or there will be a divide in your personality, because this magic is so strong. It will polarize if you don't willfully bridge the gap between these wonderful mystical truths and reconcile that with your life.
There's that distinct splitting point.
What's that?
There's like that distinct splitting point, or that division of self.
Right. Yeah. As soon as your magical life becomes equal to or larger than your mundane life, you can't serve two masters. You have to be able to balance them. Oof. That is one of the toughest things.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean
That's
to stray so far from the Neophyte ceremony.
No, this is all connected. This is all connected.
Absolutely. That's what I was just saying. Look at that.
Cough, cough. Yeah, no, it really is. Frater Ost talked about this. No matter, even if it seems that we're turning a left corner or right corner, we always resort back to one thing. We're still talking about God at the end of the day. And number two, it seems that it all still ties in right back to the original topic of what we were talking about. That's just how far internally we're traversing this topic. We went from what we're talking about, the Kyric's wand or his staff, and now we're talking about how deep that this will take you.
Right.
Which is interesting to say this, not to go on another tangent about it, but if you do see, it is, am I mistaken? It is Moses, right? It is Moses who holds up the staff, right?
Yes,
In the Old Testament.
Yeah.
If he holds it up in
Seraphim.
that fashion, and he is that sure of what that staff represent or what is awakened as he holds it, he's holding the tetragrammaton on the macrocosmic level that the Egyptians are unaware of because they don't have that gnosis yet. And I say yet, which is interesting just to say that in and of itself. He has brought out the tetragrammaton before, obviously, if you fast forward, what would be known as the pentagrammaton, a different form of expression, rather than a current that can change the universe, a current that can bring salvation for the universe through the pentagrammaton, a different symbol. But yeah, it's very, very, you see how we just keep going in circles, but we always end up right back to the original symbol. That's just how deep you can take these little symbols.
I'd go as far as to say that is a feature or a consistent feature of universal truth is that it always ties back into itself. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which is not the same as being circular. It's self-creating.
Sure. Yeah, and if you were to look at that into what you're saying, if you look at the Hall of the Neophyte, not in comparison to the other, what other grades do we have? We would have Zelator. I think that's all I think it goes through all the grades in the brick, which should be via per element rather than in the Hall of the Neophyte. One thing I've thought about in correspondence to the Kyric's wand is that I've always thought, well, why isn't spirit being introduced? If you're being born, shouldn't there be some form of spirit? Well, yes, I might be able to say yes, that as I talk to myself awkwardly with 3 other people on the call with me. But when you look at it, would a baby realize that it's being birthed into spirit at birth? People disagree with that, which is why later on you're introduced, quote unquote, spirit much later in the brick system. And in this grade, the only thing that you need to come to the realization of is the different officers expressing them through what we talked about, the planetary energies. And then you have this Kyric's wand in representation of, kind of like how I'm corresponding it to the tetragrammaton, the representation of the elements in this tool. You're being awakened microcosmically with just these elements, planetary energies, but the tool that keeps getting raised in front of you, especially the Kyric's as he walks the candidate, you're constantly seeing the tetragrammaton flash in your face. You're just unaware of it, constantly reawakening the elements within you in correspondence for later, which should be spirit. Because how can you know what spirit is if you aren't aware of the core components of the tetragrammaton of the Godhead, of what makes you your makeup in the real life, manifested self.
Right.
Wow. Through the process of understanding spirit
yourself before you can now be reintegrated with spirit. Yeah.
I guess that's one of the good sides of having access to all different kinds of information and being exposed to all kinds of different media, is that we are exposed to these symbols, so they do bear more weight whenever we see these things than somebody in the 1800s with their cotton robes between their shoulder blades.
and we're hoping it's caught in the shoulder blades. I mean, you got to remember, we have air conditioning now too. Do you imagine how hot it would have been wherever they're doing this? Like,
they were dedicated.
Like, swass is not even the terminology. We're talking about drenched something else. Like, man.
Hey, that's
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. Yeah. So microcosm in the neophyte, and then it finally expresses itself through the other grades that are listed in the brick, each per element, because it was awakened in the neophyte, and then you get to dissect it element by element. And it's as the great master says, and I think it's in all the book, or I can name one off the top of my head. I think it's in John, where he's trying to explain. Someone save me on this one. How can if you don't understand earthly things, how can I explain heavenly things?
Well, yeah,
which is why in the neophyte, all you're being focused on is just yourself. Just focus on yourself, and you'll get to know who the Father is later on. You don't know earthly things, so that's where you have to traverse the microcosm first to remember who you are, so that you can know who your Father is or who the Creator is.
If you've seen me, you've seen the Father.
Exactly. Yep.
That's a tough one. That's one we'll all be learning for the rest of our earthly lives.
No, it's crazy though, like that degree of self-awareness. That's why, like, to me, like, you know, when I start paying attention to myself, every terrible thing that I do, maybe it's not that terrible, I'll call it terrible. Every terrible thing that I do or bad thing that I do or something that doesn't support, you know, my path or my highest divine will, however you say it, it's so much more obvious now. And like, it's like, you know, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm such a terrible person. I do all these terrible things, you know, like you think stuff about people or you know, whatever, you know, kick small dogs across interstates.
What?
You know.
What are we talking about? Wait, what? I was looking at something for 2 seconds, and then I'm hearing
I don't condone
dogs.
that.
Like, wait, what?
No, but I was just like so not aware of these little, you know, cruddy habits that I had of doing, and the self-awareness makes you. To me, it made me feel like, wow, oh my gosh, I'm just a terrible person, just because. You know, it's this process of refining that makes these bad things flare up, right? They like flare up before they get, you know, and then
I'm still a little confused. Is one of your bad habits kicking dogs across the highway?
I not own a dog.
No, I hear what you mean.
Kicking the dog.
Absolutely.
Define bad habits, right?
Well, to tie it back to where this conversation started, it's like with the hoodwink, right? When you're walking around as an uninitiated person, you know, or you know, or not started down this path, and you still have that blindness over you. You don't have the awareness to see those things in your life that you want to work at, you know, that aren't in alignment with your higher will, because you're just blind to it. You know, you can't really knock somebody for being ignorant, but if you're in a state of, you know, illumination, then you can really start to dig into those things a little bit more, because you can see it, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Right, you ever like not clean a room in your house and you're like, I'm just gonna leave the light dim and it looks pretty clean. Just don't turn the light on, or else we'll be able to see how. Then I have to wipe down, I'll have to vacuum, then I have to, you know.
Oh no.
When the sun comes in and hits your altar, and you go, oh man, it's dusty.
It's so dusty. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you're like, yeah, you can see it. You can see all the finer things, you know, more clearly. And you know, it's okay to have things need to get worked on, you know. Something I say to, I guess, self-soothing is, you know, after I kick dogs across the highway.
Don't soothe yourself after that. You should feel bad for that.
You know, thinking about someone who's playing the guitar, right? They know 100 songs. They're like, wow, I don't know 100 songs of guitar. Somebody knows 100 songs. Like, oh my gosh, wow, you're such a good guitar player. But they're like, dude, there's 300,000 songs. I'm a terrible guitar player. It's like, no, you're really good. You just have a lot of other songs you can learn. So
that's such a good point.
Right, yeah. So it's like we have this stuff to work on, and then I have to catch myself. Like, it doesn't mean that I am a bad person. It just means, wow, there's so much more that can get worked on.
I think that is one of the most unique individual balances that is necessary. In my view, it seems like that is that's kind of intimate view of what they call balancing your energy centers or balancing your chakras in the Eastern tradition is learning to rest in that balanced awareness of being aware of your inherent perfections and also owning your divinity as a perfect creation of God and also a piece of God. What?
And then going to that point of reference, yes.
Oh, yeah. Yep, in the Neophyte ritual, you're blinded to the latter aspect. I don't know about you guys, but before reading about the Neophyte ritual, I was very aware of my inherent imperfections. But now I'm beginning to learn about that spark of divinity that has always been there. And
you know what's funny? Mine's kind of the opposite. I was like, oh, I'm pretty refined and spiritually developed. And then I was like, no, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that too, I think.
You know, I'm gonna throw something out there to you guys. I'm reading this out of this right now. I'm kind of lost, and I've read this a million times, and I've never caught this. This is quite interesting, and I don't know what they're referring to. So let me know what you guys think. The double cubical altar in the center of the temple is an emblem of the visible nature or the material universe, concealing within herself the mysteries of all dimensions, while revealing her surface to the exterior senses. It is a double cube because, as the emerald states, the things that are below are a reflection of the things that are above. The world of men and women created to unhappiness is a reflection of the world of divine beings created to happiness. It is described in the Sefer Yetzirah, or the Book of Formation, as an abyss of the height and an abyss of depth, an abyss of the east and an abyss of the west, and an abyss of the north and an abyss of the south. What does it mean by that right there? What is it talking about? Is it still talking about the double cube? Is this all about the double cube?
Yeah, it's vastness, right? And it's
got you. Okay.
Taking up to allude to the entirety of the, or to totality of the universe, right?
Mama said.
Uh-huh.
Like that, every corner of infinity.
I got you. Inside the double cube. Wow. Have either of you actually thought to project inside of the double cube?
Yeah, because there is a model of the tree that is inside the double cube, right?
Because if it's referring to this abyss in all the quadrants of the cube, I wonder if that would be what it would be like if you were to project or at least scry on the symbol of the double cube. Interesting. I never would have thought about that. What is it? No, Frater, no!
He's lost in the universe forever.
It's found in the universe forever.
What's that guy from the Waterboy? Is it the Waterboy where his eyes are all wonky? He's got the conductor goggles on.
Oh yeah.
If you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, new exercise. I'm definitely gonna try that. I've thought about it, but I haven't tried it.
I like that idea though of the cosmos, the tree of life within the cube or the double cube.
Well, it's fascinating because, and why I bring that up, it's pretty random. So you have the pillars, which are meant to be, you could say, a door or an entrance, something that can either go or come from, as the Hierophant does. He's the only officer who does that, comes and goes as he pleases. It's interesting that you need that in correlation to this altar, in correlation to the elements that are present and all these different correspondences that are doing one thing. And this is what's crazy. The whole purpose of the ceremony is one goal: awaken the candidate. All of these correspondences that are plugged into this tradition through the brick that's left over for us knuckleheads to do is to initiate one candidate. And that's what I mean, kind of now to go backwards again. How in the world did this come together? And I think, Frater, you mentioned what document was that where it does lift the journals and stuff?
The cipher manuscripts.
Cipher manuscripts. Where in the heck did they pull this from? Very interesting. Very interesting. On all the different correspondences that are needed in order to do this.
What are the recorded origins of the cipher manuscripts?
What was that, Sora?
What are the like the recorded origins of the cipher manuscripts.
Or at least the claimed origins.
Exactly.
The claimed origins. Do you guys know? Have you heard ever?
I don't.
Yeah,
I
because
haven't studied that.
and that's a good. You have to say claimed origins because that was the same thing. When I asked my mom where she met my dad, that was a claimed origin. I found out later. Truth. That was the truth. Okay, so claimed origins. We need that clarification. All right.
Cool.
I thought I was just coming here to talk, but I have homework now.
Yeah.
What are we going on? Let me check the time. I don't want to keep this going too long. It is Thursday, 6 o'clock. We are coming up to the hour range. Our usual normal thing, we like to do an hour. I don't know. What are you guys thinking? You want to close it out for the day? I think we talked about an insane amount of stuff.
This will be plenty to digest for anybody.
Anybody? Yeah. And remember,
you're gonna need a club soda with this one, guys.
Anybody who's listening, anybody. The question of the night is that we've stumped even all of. I don't know. I have no idea. I'd like to know. Maybe we'll get a quote unquote adept. That seems to be the name, or a master of this tradition that can, leave in the comments. Hey, maybe message us. Maybe they'd like to come on to our show. And guide us. Where is the Hierophant coming from when he goes through the exit, comes out the entrance, and then grabs the hand of the candidate, and then just whoop, goes right back as if nothing ever happened? And what's interesting is this. Here's another interesting fact. So he's shouting, right? That shows his realm of authority and his vibrational output. If whatever he says can be echoed through the exit down to where the officers are. Think about that. Because the officers are touching the candidate, which means they're set in an abode. Wherever this is happening, the officers are all with the candidate. And the Hierophant is not per se there. Think about that. Because remember, he comes from the exit, which means he's somewhere else. And everything that he's saying is echoing into the hall. That's another really key thing to look at, how important the Hierophant is that his word echoes wherever the heck he's coming from, all the way down into the hall of the Neophyte. Something to think about.
Food for thought.
Food for thought, guys. Yeah, I'm setting up a Patreon and a PayPal. Yeah, food for thought. Food for thought.
Found in the mysteries, no big deal.
Yeah, it's no big deal. No big deal. Anyways.
Thank you for that walkthrough and those provoking thoughts, Ryder. You really got me thinking. It's going to be a night of study tonight.
I'm still trying to figure it out. So yeah, if we do want to wrap it up, if Sora, do you have anything? Ryder, do you have anything you want to wrap it up with, or you want to close it out? Any last words?
I think we covered a lot of really great stuff today.
No,
cool.
I like how it's so fluid. I mean, we could have set this up as like, okay, open your book to this page and then line by line read the Neophyte Ceremony, and
right.
It would have just been, it would have been much more drab. I love the free flow that we get into with this, because we get to explore a lot of different cool stuff. So
the popcorn style suits us, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really did.
Cool. Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, we did it.
So, all right, we did it. This is episode 3. And again, this is iHeart Golden Dawn Radio.
The
light of the cross.
We got it right that time, guys. Alrighty. Join us. It will be a couple weeks. Join us in a couple weeks on episode 4, which we are going to do discover what that's going to be, and it will remain until then part of the mysteries. And there you go. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight to all of you, anybody who's watching, and to my co-hosts as well. You guys have a good night.
Take care, Ryder.
Thank you.
All right, good night. Bye.